welcome.
What's up? Good morning. What's going on, guys? What's up?
Welcome back to Is It Crazy or Is It God Live. You know what's funny is like, oh, hey, Damita Jo.
What's
Yo, you
up?
be on it. I don't even know what kind of stratosphere you be in, but I'm so glad you
Early in the morning.
you joined us right away. That's so amazing.
Sound is good.
Excellent. Sound check, production got it on lock. We're not TikToking live today. Like, even though, why do I even say that? Because people wouldn't know if they weren't on TikTok. So anyway, we're not TikToking today, but we're here on Instagram and we're on our channel on YouTube. And obviously this is our podcast, Is It Crazy or Is It God?
Okay,
Where we talk about reading the Bible, and that's it.
That's all we talk about.
That's really all we talk about. We talk about what we learned in the Bible. And we're trying to encourage a community of Bible readers to just pick up and join with us and start reading. And you don't already have to read, you don't have to already be a reader of the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it's even more amazing when you're not reading the Bible and then you say, hey, I want to join them. I want to read the Bible. So if you're one of those people, say what's up in the chat. I'm on one this morning, y'all. I'm so excited.
Because God gave,
For sure. I'm excited about what we're doing later, but yeah, that's neither here nor there. I'm excited for now. It's actually something that's happening at church, so I'm excited about. But
yes.
Anyway, welcome. You know what I want to ask you?
No. I don't.
You should. I
don't know, guys.
How did you apply the word this week? Or, what else do we say? We're like, how did you apply the word, or what did you learn from the word this week? What have you been focused on? What kind of what word helped you through the week?
So
a couple things.
Yeah. So what I'm starting to realize is God is right.
Really?
Okay. Now the great thing is, we're good.
Okay. Gotcha.
The great thing is He is always right. He is the truth. And what I learned from Him this week is something that God always says, and what I have learned in the Bible is clearly I don't know anything. And I have to be okay with not knowing anything. Because I can't lean on my understanding. This is not saying that I don't know anything in life, but I know how to tie my shoes. I know how to write.
You know how to do a lot of stuff.
But when it comes to the Bible, I don't really know anything. That's a true statement, right? God has taught me that when you lean on Him and His word, and you have patience, you're going to start seeking results. And you have to give Him glory first. So I learned that through God, if I keep going and following His word and being kind and being loving and being honest and being good to thy neighbor and not lying and not keeping false balances. A lot of people keep false balances. Y'all know what that means?
No.
You'll find out what it means. When people aren't keeping good books with their business, and sometimes people...
false balances. Oh, okay, gotcha.
Scammers. Anyway, be very mindful of them. And serve people rather than serving yourself. Give more than you receive. All of these things, these cliches that we hear that are in the Bible, I'm learning in real time how true they are. And I know that sounds crazy, like, oh, you didn't know? No, I did not know. Did not know. Because the only way that you know is if you're in the Word. Because once again, if we go by John 1, the Word was with God in the beginning, and the Word is the Word, which means the Word is the truth, which means whatever God says is the truth. So if the Bible says it, it is true. So that's what I learned. I learned that through not my own understanding and through God's understanding, that everything goes through him, and I'm starting to see my life change.
Yeah. Okay.
And
I can dig it.
I'm going to give y'all a Bible verse. And that's what I learned this week. And the Bible verse, it is, give me 2 seconds. I don't know about heart.
Well, I mean, even if you mention, what it is, I'm sure that we can go and Google. Google is our friend. That's what I like to say.
Here it is. Matthew 6:33. But first seek the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you.
Oh yeah, that's what's up.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? That's really tied to.
Yeah, and I also learned something else, but I'm gonna share that at a different time because that's a little bit more deeper understanding. I need to continue to go through the word. Yeah. I'm gonna share that next week because I still gotta do some reading, but God's showing me something, and but I learned just to go through him to seek guidance in life, and it's gonna be hard, and then you're going to you're not really going to seek the benefits in real time, but I'm starting to see myself change for the positive. That's where I'm at. That's what's up. I love it. Yep. I love it. I learned a couple things this week. It's so funny. Maybe it's just the way that we speak about it, but it's so funny that a lot of times I'm just noticing a pattern. Like your answer to this question every week is like, oh yeah, I'm in the word. I'm learning this. I'm so, doing so well. And then I just look at it from a different perspective of my own self. It's like, oh, I guess I'm failing. But I'm not failing. I mean, even the realization of what I need to improve is not failing. Like just the idea that like, oh, this is highlighted as something that needs improvement. That's a win. But I just, it's like so funny because sometimes I'll be reading the word and I'll be like, oh, they're not describing me at all. So this is where I need to start. But anyway, so I'm going to go to Galatians. So one of my favorites is Galatians 6:9, which is, let's not stop doing the work that is good, for you will reap what you sow. Basically, like a harvest will come if you keep working. And so, but this is Galatians 6:7 through 6:8, and it kind of leads in obviously to 6:9. It's kind of an overall like thing that I learned this week, which is basically, do not be misled. You cannot mock the justice of God. You will always harvest what you plant. Those who live only to satisfy their own sinful nature will harvest decay and death from that sinful nature. But those who live to please the Spirit will harvest everlasting life from the Spirit. So I'm going through this thing right now where I'm identifying distractions in my life. Like, not even like identifying and like zapping them out, but just like some of them I am, but most of them, like, I'm just noticing they're like, that's not really like my calling or my purpose. Why am I focusing my energy on that? So I guess overall, this is like not what I learned in the Bible, but I'm just going to start from where I started. Overall, I've just noticed that like there's an amazing amount of distractions and things we're responsible for as adults that are not necessarily like important. But if we it's so easy though to spend your whole day, week, month, year, life just wrapped up into these distractions. It's like one after the next, things that like irritate you, but are not even really like part of your purpose. Like all the responsibilities that we have, all the like, the digital sort of like the digital onslaught of information, of content, of sort of like flashing lights, like point here, you know what I mean? It's like if you don't really have a goal and you're not walking towards something, it's like walking down the street of New York, Times Square. It's like something's going to catch your attention, right? So if you're walking through this life thinking like, oh, I'll figure it out, right? And I don't need a goal. It's like you're walking down Times Square. Something's going to catch your attention and you're going to get caught up in something. You're not going to get forward. You're not going to get towards your goal. And I feel like that's kind of like life for me, right? So when it says do not be misled, you can't mock the justice of God. It's like, look,
what you plant is going to be harvested. Like, there's no way around it. That's like one of God's laws. And we heard this yesterday when we were listening to Myron. Myron was saying, like, Myron Golden, by the way. We talk about him like he's our uncle, but maybe he is.
We're going to meet him one day.
Oh, for sure. But one of the things that he was saying is like, about the New Age stuff. He was like, maybe what I'm saying sounds New Age, but understand that New Age stuff came from, the truth is the truth. So like people who aren't necessarily followers of God, they could still say truth. They, like, some of that stuff is the truth. It's just that they're not using it for God's glory, which, I mean, doesn't make it not the truth. Like, if you use God's principles and you're not a Christian, they're going to work. Like, that's just the way that it is. The truth is the
God
truth.
Like that.
So what I'm realizing is, like, whatever it is that I desire and that I want and that I'm working towards, as long as I'm spending my time, resources, energy, attention, all my faculties and like myself, as long as I'm applying myself to the doing of the thing, it's going to happen. It's not going to go another way because I'm focused on that. And that's a principle of God. So anyway, that's kind of where I am. I know that was like a big, long explanation. I felt like I was talking for
probably 10 minutes and people probably still don't understand what I said.
Well, no, it's fine. Listen, we're learning and growing here. So this is a safe space. But yeah, hopefully that came across clearly. Basically, I'm learning that God's word is the truth. If you apply it, it will work. Sometimes it doesn't, like, it's not like instant, like a genie. But if you are,
it will tarry.
If you're faithful and you apply God's word, like, it's the truth. You really, honestly, I don't want to promote that, but it's like you can use the word and not be a believer and it's still going to work out for you. But I mean, I'm not trying to promote that.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, there's so much good in the word. It's like, you don't want the emptiness of whatever it gives you here. Cause like, that's one thing that I'm learning too about, I don't know, we kind of talk about that sometimes, but I'm not trying to go there. The idea that like, we know we're expiring. We know that there's an end. There's so many things about us being on the earth physically that are so specific that they couldn't have been a coincidence. Like, just the fact that we're encapsulated and we're the only planet that has gravity, right? And we can't get outside of the atmosphere without all of this force of building a rocket and all that. It's like, how were we put here and none of the other planets like that are within our, like have the same thing that we do? So it's like interesting for me to kind of explore those things, but yeah, that's where I am, just learning on our journey. Okay, let's get started.
Okay.
This week we read Amos.
Yeah.
Now, Amos is only 9 chapters.
Yes.
Right? Is that right?
That's it.
It's one book, 9 chapters. And it was, for that reason, it was a fairly easy, simple read. I did get caught up in a couple of parts where I wasn't super clear on... like, especially towards the end where he was giving the visions. We'll get to all that and we'll break it down. But I got caught up on a couple of parts, but it's so interesting to see how over and over, like, these different people who didn't know each other, who couldn't have possibly known each other, right? Like, are saying the same story within detail, like they're prophesying. So that's so interesting to me because it's like, obviously, it's fascinating. Yeah. But anyway, okay, please.
Oh,
please take it away.
So shout out to the Bible Project too, because sometimes, and guys, for real, we just saw, to piggyback on your point, we just saw an Instagram. Actually, I saw it, they sent it to me, where it's this young lady, she's reading the Bible and she's like, oh. And then it said, this is what it seems like reading the Bible. In actuality, when you read the Bible, we're like this. This is crazy. Or I don't know how to say this name. Or I've never seen this word before. And it's in the dictionary. And, oh, I never knew this word meant this. I've been saying this wrong the whole time. Because it's crazy. And the names, and then the way, the detail of God and the way the sentences are created and the way that it is written, it's not an easy read. You're going to have to
dig in.
So,
but take it slow.
You got to take it slow. Listen, you can read it, but are you reading? What's your end goal? You can just read to read, but if you want to read to understand the Lord and to fear him, then you read slowly to understand what he's actually saying to you. And that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to read it slowly and understand, because at the end of the day, the compound interest is going to get done. Listen, we would rather read slowly for understanding than read fast for not, especially when you're dealing with life and death. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to mess this up, but it's one of those Myronisms. So it's like, you read don't read so fast that you're trying to get it over with and don't let it get into you. Right? So I messed it up. But basically, you want to take away the information. I just can't stress this enough, because I went for years. I mean, what am I? 42. Mm-hmm. Listen, I'm just putting it out there, folks. This is what 42 looks like.
That's good.
Thank you. But so I guess before that, I was reading the Bible before we started this, but I wasn't reading it from cover to cover. So I guess I was maybe 3 years ago when we started this actual project. But before then, I would read. Obviously, you go to church, they give you a verse. I'll go and I'll study that. Sometimes I'll be looking for something specific, and I'll go search and see what I can find about this or that. But reading it in its context, reading the actual chapters and getting on a good Bible plan, reading plan, breaking it down, is so beneficial. I keep saying this, and I'm not going to stop. Number one, it just brings such a peace to your day. I just have to say this real quick. I don't know where this is coming from. We didn't plan this, but we have had a couple of days, even recently, where it's not like I didn't want to read, but I felt I need to do this and I need to do that. Mm-hmm. And even maybe having an attitude or some irritation coming in, I gotta, I have so much on my mind, but I'm going to read because that's what I said I was going to do. And coming into the word and letting it come over you is such an experience, and it calms you. There was one day, I don't know if it was last week or what, we were reading and I was irritated with you. You were irritated with me. And as we were reading, all of that stuff just fell away, and I was just learning. And it was just amazing. And also just certain things come to me when I'm not thinking about it. And I'm oh, that's what that means. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's so important to have the word as your tool as you're navigating through life. Because now I'm just imagining all the things, all the time that I walk through life and I didn't necessarily know how to handle things. And what's going to happen is I'm going to use my instinct. It's I'm going to do this because this is what it feels like doing. Right. Mm-hmm. But when you actually are equipped with the word and you're oh, what does God say about it? Even though it doesn't necessarily feel good to do it the way God says do it, it's for the best. And I can see that from experience now, even over these past couple of years of me learning and being okay, let me pray about it. I don't want to do it like this. And having God, there's been a few situations specifically that I'm thinking about that okay, I'm seeking the word, which is not what I would naturally do. And then the situations turned out better than I could have imagined. So anyway, just wanted to put that there. Put that right out there for you. Okay. Now, please.
All right. So Amos is the backstory of Amos is he's a shepherd. Believes in God, mind his business. But the problem is Israel King Joram is wild. He's greedy. He's doing opposite of whatever God is saying. Mm-hmm. And Joram is wilding out. There's idols everywhere, people worshiping. He's selling people as slaves. Yes, this happened constantly in the Bible. Guys, God doesn't like it. It's evil, right? Selling another human is evil. And when it's talked about in Exodus, it's talking about somebody owing a debt, not capturing people and enslaving them. Context is everything, guys. Context. Right? So the new King Joram was selling people into slavery. He was just doing opposite of everything. He was an evil king, his evil portion. Amos was a herder, and God came to him and he said, all right, I gotta prophet. I gotta become a prophet because God told me to do this. Can you imagine that? You're a shepherd. God's like, hey, I need you to do this now. And he did it. So the first 2 chapters, Amos is talking about God, is talking about, hey, all of these nations around Israel are doing wrong, and I'm going to take care of them. And he explains of what they're doing wrong and what he's going to do to those nations that is surrounding Israel. So he explains that. Then he talked about the sins of Moab, Damascus. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Gaza, Tyre,
Edom. Edom.
It's okay. We don't pronounce none of this stuff.
Judah.
You said Damascus, I think.
Ammonites.
Yeah.
Moab. Right? These are all the nations that are surrounding Israel. And then he says the enemy will rise. Now God's telling him about all the punishments. Everything. All the punishments. And lastly, God says Israel. And he reminds Israel of the punishment because they sell the righteous and innocent for silver and the needy for a price of sandals. See that? That's Amos 2:6. Yeah, they're selling people anyway. I mean, it's evil. So, then God gets to Israel. And then God reminds Israel, it's like, you selling people into slavery? You always be slaves, though? I know. Okay, we're going to have to come back to that. When I didn't save you, you didn't have bread in the wilderness? You was in the wilderness for 40 years, and I kept you as a people, and I brought you. And now you're wilding out? And now you're enslaving people when you came out of slavery? You're enslaving people. You're worshiping idols. There's sex everywhere. The king is evil. All right, Israel, I got you. I just have to punish you again because y'all don't understand. I mean, think about it, right? If we're God's children, if you raise a child, they always putting their hands on stuff and they don't know, so they need guidance. I think that's how God looks at us. Like, here we go again. You're putting your hand on the stove and I told you it was hot, but you're not listening. So here's the question. That's Amos 1-5. A lot of atrocities listed here. Compare and contrast them to modern day atrocities. Dare they ask that? Okay, that's negative. I think it's negative. I think it's a really simple question. So the entire time you were saying it, when you were kind of recapping everything, I was being reminded. Like even when you were talking about the leadership, about how was it Jeroboam? Guys, we're not going to pronounce all this stuff correctly, but okay. But even that, it's like he was. Here's what I thought was interesting that was pointed out to me is that they were successful financially. They as a land, as a people, they were. I guess their economy was bustling. They probably had, goods and services to trade, and everybody was, populating, being fruitful and multiplying. But then you have these people who are. There was one where they were cutting open the bellies of pregnant women. You have these people who are enslaving people who are actually that was Israel who was Gilead who was saying that we're going to enslave these people and then we're going to make sure that they don't have proper representation by the law so that they'll stay slaves. That reminded me of something that's been happening for years in this country. But just the idea that people, so one of the things when they were talking about the golden calves and stuff, we do that a lot. We idolize stuff all the time, modern day, especially I can't let it go. Our phones, our devices, it's like an idol. We are not I guarantee you we're on our phones more than we are worshiping God. Right. So sometimes I use my phone, you know what I'm saying? But it's not
it's not that we're horrible because we use our phones, but it's just like, it's something that they're asking you right now to compare and contrast. It's something that probably they thought about those golden calves. Like, they're just golden calves. They're so pretty. Look at them. Like, we're not choosing them over God. We're just not worshiping God because we're looking at the calves. Right? Like, I think it's so easy, especially in these days, and probably back then too, to just be focused on something else. And actually, when we were in church last week, I was thinking about that because we were talking about service and things. And so many of us are so busy, or we have to check our schedules of our worldly things to see if we have time to serve God's kingdom. And that's backwards, right? It's like, obviously we have to feed our families and have our jobs and stuff like that. But like, that's one of the reasons why I get up and praise God first. Cause it's like, nothing's going to stop me from doing this. Yeah. Right. Like, I'm not going to be perplexed when it comes to be time to work on whether I'm going to praise God or whether I'm going to work. I'm going to follow through my obligations, but that means I'm going to have to put God before that. Right. So it's like, I think that, the atrocities that they listed seem really, crazy, but it's stuff that nowadays it's like normal. It's normal. So when they talk about the king who was doing well in all of the circumstances, like, oh, the nation is well, we're financially stable, we have buildings and cities, and the people are happy, and but the main thing was that they weren't serving God. So like, you think you're doing well, but you're doing well for the world, and then when you pass away, then what? Like, because that's going to happen, right? So, like, if you're not preparing for it, like, what are you doing? But I also realized that, like, your life is going to be made better when you follow the way that God set things up. It's, like, not going to happen a different way. Like, we haven't seen that work. We don't have evidence that works. Well, we have all this evidence that it works when you do it the way God does. Anyway, I'm all off on a tangent, but yeah, compare and contrast in the modern day atrocities. The comparison is that there are lots of similarities. The contrast is that I think we have many more choices now, which can be good and bad, but I think it's actually good. Okay. I think it's actually good because the same things that we use, like that we kind of like so for instance, the idolatry of devices. You could actually use your device to worship God. And like you said, if you focus on God and seek his righteousness, then all the other things will be added unto you. So it's like, okay, well, you could either go about trying to get all the things, the Rolls Royce, the money, the car, this and that, whatever. I don't know. I'm not saying God's giving us out, or you could seek God and he's going to make sure you're straight. Yes. And so I think the contrast is that I wasn't there back then, so I don't know. I don't think they had the internet though. But now it's even a more of a choice. There's more choices out there, which means there's more pathways to God. Yeah. Right. Like maybe back in the day they were limited. It's just like either you're with these folks and you're worshiping God or you're not. Yeah. Now it's like, oh, there's a number of ways that you can get to God, like through the internet, through the church, through, you know what I'm saying? So anyway, that's my compare and contrast. Okay, what do you say? I'm going to read the question again for you. A lot of atrocities are listed in Amos 1-5. Compare and contrast them to modern day atrocities. Yes. Okay, that's a good comment. I'm going to put that up there. Yes. So I just think it's literally the same, and I think God has been warning about this for a while. I just think that yes, the internet is good for you just like a sword is. It's like it depends on how you use it and when you use it and what you use it to do. And that's what God is. Most times people pick up a sword and back then they would say, well, I want this calf. What's stopping me from taking this calf from this guy when I'm hungry? Versus somebody else having a sword and saying, let me give this to my neighbor or use this to protect myself in case somebody tries. There's a difference on what you use tools and how you use them. And God is just telling you, hey, God's been telling us about false idols since Exodus, since Genesis, right? We say we care, but we don't because
the first time that we knew God has given us everything, we still went against his word. When we knew we had the abundance of everything, we still chose, Adam and Eve still chose to eat the fruit to choose
wisdom. Not even wisdom, just to choose to. That's what they were, that's what they were told.
Yeah.
You could have the wisdom of God. What did he say? He was like, God will know between good and evil.
Yeah, you will be just as how God
You'll know what God knows.
You'll know what God knows.
That's
and
what
you
the
will
serpent
surely
promised.
not die. And he was wrong. Because we don't know what God knows and we're gonna die. So he lied on all fronts. But I just think it's the same thing, right? Oscar's gold. Like, I just think that a lot of things that we choose as idols, like, I don't think people know what worshiping an idol is until you finally get into the Bible to find out what worshiping is.
Yeah.
So
this is a great comment. I just want to share this with everyone. Miss Damita Jo says, is it the phone or what people choose to do with the phones? She said in your father's voice. That's so funny. I knew exactly what she meant by that. I messed that up.
All right, guys, we're going to go
into the next part.
Yes.
This is probably going to be a little bit of a shorter episode. But okay, the next part, because it's only two. It's a very short book of the Bible. Amos 6-9.
Amos 6-9. This basically God and Amos. Amos starts telling everybody what God's going to do, and then God is telling him what he's going to do. He's saying, hey, guys, guess what? All this is going to lead to the destruction of the idols. God's going to bring down fire. And then we just were talking the other day, God has 3 different types of fires. One that doesn't burn. Moses saw the burning bush. One that
does burn. One
that he calls, that Elijah did.
And then the other one that burns some and not others, like the Meshach, Shadrach,
and Abednego. But we haven't got there yet, so we don't. I think it's in Daniel, but we haven't got to that story. But
what's funny? I don't even know that story yet, but I do know that you're not supposed to call them that. They were given other names or something.
Yeah,
but it's so catchy. People want to say that.
But yeah, and Abednego, yes. And God probably knew that to get his message out.
Yep.
And then it talks about here. People say it doesn't talk about Christ. It talks about Christ again, where David's descendant is going to be a Masonic king. And it just talks about how he's going to save and bring all nations under God. So that's the end of Amos. Now, this is asking you a question, and I got to go.
I know, that's what you know what?
The question is, guys, which modern day country does Amos 6:1-7 remind you of, and why? I don't understand why they're never mind.
I mean, they're a little messy. Let me just shout them out though, because they got a good daily Bible reading plan. 365 daily Bible reading plan from teachsundayschool.com. It was part of a larger package, but you can pretty much get a Bible reading plan from a lot of different places. But sometimes we're reading their sort of like reading prompts, and sometimes I feel like they're a little bit messy. They had a couple of questions last year about when we were going over last year about like, how does this remind you of the political system in America or something like that? And I was like, what y'all talking?
This might be the last time I read them. Anyway, it's like we got to stay.
Listen, we want to stay focused, but we don't even have to read this. But we don't even have to talk about this. Which modern day country does Amos 6:1-7 remind you of, and why?
So the only thing about that question is,
it could be a lot.
Question, if that is based in America, you're only going to talk about America. I can't talk about every country. Here's what I'm going to say: every country is doing the same under God. Bad, evil.
Oh my gosh!
It doesn't matter because it doesn't matter. Yes, we live in America. Well, Wi-Fi is free and we live with all these luxuries. But like, we have luxuries that other people have luxuries that we don't have. Other people, and some in this country too, but they live on the land and they get to access all the beautiful of God's glory, and they created the land. They live on a farm, and they get to see all his animals and all his creation, right? Or you can live in the city of New York and look at all the beautiful historic buildings. In other countries, they have better beaches. Like, I just think that God's glory is in all countries, and everything described in that Bible verse is every country and every aspect of it, because it's the Bible. Everything that's described through 1, 6, and 7 in Amos has to happen in every country, because this is before all the countries were even here.
I mean, even more. So to your point, but even so, we're going to basically talk about a better question or a better takeaway, because we're going to talk about Amos's visions. I thought that was interesting. Yeah. But I think even more important than trying to say like which. This is an interesting conversation that we started a few days ago. More important than figuring out like which country is this most like that Amos is describing. It's like, I'm not really sure that that's going to really help us, right? Really what would be helpful is understanding how to apply it, or like what God means by it, or learning more about God by that. So, I mean, I'm not trying to, kind of
really
be rude to them.
Like, let's talk about Amos 9.
Well, so that's what we'll do then. But I'm not trying to be rude. Somebody's job was to come up with those questions, and maybe that was a tough day for them. And they were just like, oh, let's put this in there. Like, who knows? More importantly, though, is that regardless of which country is which, we're all on God's green earth. So even if it was like one country is better than the other, or one person is better than the other, it's nothing like nobody's better than anybody. We're all, in the eyes of God, like we're all his children. And I think that's really one of the major misconceptions and challenges that we face as human beings. Is like, the point isn't to like find fault or to say, oh, I know about your type, I've read about you in the Bible. It's like, that's fine if you make that assessment for yourself, but is it helpful to like share it? Is it helpful to, or is it more helpful to focus on your purpose in your relationship with God, right? Like, it's not probably that helpful for me to say, is this more like London or France? Or, or it's more helpful for me to say, like, what can I take away from this to say, what does God want me to do? And what does he not want me to do? And what is he trying to get me to see so that I can be purposeful and that I can learn more and become more in Christ? And so that's really kind of what we want to focus on, right? Yeah. So I'll let you go ahead, because you said you wanted to talk on that, but I think that is important to call out, because it's like, that's probably the nature, especially when you are reading the Bible, you're automatically like making connections, and you're drawing parallels, and you're like, because so many things make so much sense in several arenas. So it's like, wow, this makes sense financially, this makes sense like relationship wise, this makes sense as far as community is concerned, this makes sense practically, like, and so God's word makes sense in so many ways. And so, for you to kind of like reduce it down to just compare, it just doesn't make any sense. But it is natural for us to be like, oh, well, God says this, and that's not what I see. So it's kind of like, but that's a distraction, I think, in my opinion. I think that's a distraction, because it's not really helping you do.
We're not understanding.
If it's helping you do what God has you doing, then sure, make those connections. But I think it's very important for us to like not miss that, like, the Bible is for us to be better and to please God and to understand more about him. Yeah. And to, like, honestly, being selfish is going to make you have a better life. Yeah. Because you're going to be more equipped.
Yeah. And just to add on to that, and we're going to wrap up, but all I'm saying is that, and I agree with you, like, what you just said is totally understandable, and I don't think people look at it like that, and they should. Like, hey, let me take this. And I think what they do is they take the Bible, take it out of context. When I say context, read, and this is why reading is so important. Because I have to address this on homecoming, where people are renouncing and denouncing, and I'll get into more of that there. But you can denounce and renounce something all you want, and I understand that. But don't take a Bible verse in Isaiah, when I'm reading Isaiah and knowing what Isaiah and Amos are doing in the time of Israel versus the time you're going through now, versus what God really says about idols in Exodus. And you got to remember what happened in Exodus is when the Jewish people just came out of slavery and then came out of the wilderness. And then these are the new laws that God said live by. But then if you go to Jesus, you're supposed to walk like Jesus, and walking like Jesus coincides with fearing God.
Yeah.
That's the same thing, right? They're on the same accord.
Yeah.
The problem is we're not on the same accord at all. We're not even ourselves. So when we read the Bible, and if you're not into the Bible, reading it every day and worshiping God, He's going to lead you to understand it. Please don't just look up a Bible verse on the internet saying this what it means and then telling people that this is what you believe. Because then it's not about you. It is about you. And it shouldn't be. It should be about them. But it's more so about you so you can get recognition of doing something God told you to do behind closed doors. I don't need to know that you did any of that. You should be just praising God behind closed doors because everything dark comes to light, right? So you don't need to announce it. When you pray, you're supposed to pray in silence. And the reason for that is nobody needs to know what
solitude. Yeah.
Nobody needs to know what you and God have going on. If God tells you to do it, yes. Right? But y'all don't know. Listen, y'all know what we have going on here, but I'm not going to tell you what God really walks with me because He's not telling me to do that.
Yeah, same.
Because it's not, because when you start sharing, you start praising yourself more than Him, and then yourself could be considered an idol. But we're not going to get into that.
Okay.
That's the different. Yeah, that's the different. That's a different thing. I'll save that for the Homecoming podcast. But we're
at time, guys.
Yes,
thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Is It Crazy of God, where we are striving to encourage a community of Bible readers to pick up and read their Bible with us. Okay, we're gonna give some shout outs quickly, and then we're gonna close out. Do you have any shout outs this week?
Yes, shout out to what that rant I just went on. We're gonna film Homecoming later this week. Talk about renouncing and denouncing Greek sororities in schools. Also, fourth quarter NBA finals are coming up, guys. Come check us out on there, where it's for the fans, by the fans. Also, go check out. Shout out to Damita Jo and Faith, those two sisters.
Yes,
it's rated PG-13. So
yeah,
maybe
Listen, Saint.
Listen.
We're over here having real conversations, and we are God-minded, okay? And we're still in this world, and we're still here, guys. So that's all I'm going to say about that. And just, don't bring your children. Don't bring your small children who have sensitive ears. But everything we talk about is real. So come over there and get a dose of reality and have some fun. So that's that.
Shout out to my wife, Yes, I'm a Unicorn, for planner, organization, and time.
It's funny because I was like, I have so much in store that I keep talking about it, but I just need to do. So anyway, we have a lot of stuff that we have coming up for you guys. We're so excited about. Let me give a shout out to so you had already mentioned DCity Life Sisters, where we film every. We go live every Thursday night over on Miss Damita Jo's channel, and I'll make sure I update the link in the description box. And actually, we're on our DCity Life channel as well, and we're all over the internet. So don't put us in a box. And shout out to, this is like such a random shout out, but I'm going to make the shout out to the publishers who make Christian books for like children and stuff. Like, this is what I'm looking at right now. The books about, this is actually not for children, but I like things like this because it helps me to understand and like this is called teaching the most significant teachers in the Bible. But I like stuff like that. And I actually read one of my Bibles, the one I take to church is the International Children's Version. Is the International Children's Version? I think that is such a good practice to like review material with the eyes of like, from a child's perspective, because it's like very simple to the point. It's harder to misconstrue. It's like easier to conceptualize. And I mean, I just like the colors and pictures too. Maybe I'm a child at art. But anyway, shout out to everybody who's making tools for children to learn to read the Bible, because I'm using those too.
All right, guys.
With that said, remember, don't take our word for it.
Go to the source.
Read your Bible.
All right, guys.
Have a good one. Be blessed. All right.